You step outside this morning, and you hear them. Sparrows bickering in the hedgerow, a crow dismantling something on the fence post, starlings moving in a loose, undisciplined cloud above the rooftops. Birds are everywhere, so completely woven into the fabric of daily life that your brain has quietly stopped registering them as anything remarkable. But pause for just a moment and ask yourself one genuinely strange question. When was the last time you actually found a dead bird? Not a cat's trophy on a doorstep, not roadkill on a highway, not a window collision victim on a city sidewalk. A bird that simply died on its own, the way living things are supposed to die. Of age, of exhaustion, of a body that finally gave out. You almost certainly cannot remember. And that absence, that clean, total erasure, is not coincidence. It is one of the most quietly extraordinary biological systems in the natural world, playing out in the trees above your house, every single day, completely without your knowledge. Let's start with the numbers, because the numbers are genuinely unsettling. There are an estimated 300 billion birds alive on Earth right now. In North America alone, somewhere between 10 and 20 billion birds occupy the continent at any given time. The American Bird Conservancy estimates that roughly 1 billion birds die in the United States every single year from natural causes alone, before predation, before window collisions, before any human factor enters the picture. 1 billion. That is approximately 3 deaths every second of every day, somewhere across this country. A bird is dying of natural causes, and yet you have never seen it. The ratio between the death and the evidence is so completely mismatched that biologists actually have a name for it. They call it the mortality visibility problem. And the answer to it begins somewhere much deeper than you would expect, inside the nervous system of the bird itself. Birds are not neurologically hardwired to hide weakness, and they do it with a ferocity that is almost difficult to believe. Research published in the journal Animal Behavior found that even domesticated birds under controlled laboratory observation will suppress pain responses, mask limping gaits, and conceal behavioral signs of infection when they perceive any form of threat nearby. They will perform health they do not have. They will move normally on a leg that is broken. They will sing on a morning they are dying. This is not something they learned. This is 150 million years of predator pressure burned directly into the architecture of their biology. Every ancestral bird that visibly slowed down, that ruffled its feathers the wrong way, that telegraphed internal distress even for a single vulnerable moment was taken. The birds alive today are exclusively the descendants of those who hid it perfectly. Vulnerability, for a bird, is not a feeling. It is a death sentence. But here is where it gets stranger, because concealment during life is only half of the story. As a bird enters its final decline, its physiology moves fast. Passerine birds, your sparrows, your finches, your garden warblers run a metabolism roughly 15 to 20 times the resting rate of a comparably sized mammal. That hyperspeed metabolism means that the terminal phase of illness or organ failure in a small bird can unfold in hours. A house sparrow that looks perfectly normal perched on your garden fence at dawn can be dead before you finish your morning coffee. And in those final hours, it does not stay in the open. It moves inward, down into dense vegetation, into the hollow spaces behind loose bark, into the compressed, lightless core of a thick shrub. Field researchers at the British Trust for Ornithology documented this terminal withdrawal behavior across dozens of species and found that in their final hours, birds consistently seek out environments where visibility from above, from the sides, and from below is simultaneously minimized. They do not collapse. They do not fall from the sky. They choose a place, and they disappear before they die. And what happens after that is where the natural world reveals something genuinely cold about itself, because the forest does not leave evidence. It destroys it. Blow flies from the family Calliphoridae species that have been co-evolving with vertebrate mortality for millions of years can detect the specific volatile organic compounds released by a body within minutes of death, across distances exceeding a kilometer. The landscape is, at all times, quietly monitoring for precisely this event. Simultaneously, the birds themselves participate in the erasure. Crows, ravens, and several corvid species have been documented consuming recently dead members of their own species. Researchers at the University of Washington described this behavior as both nutritional opportunism and potentially a mechanism for reducing pathogenerate load within a shared territory. A small songbird carcass in a temperate woodland, under the right conditions, can be reduced to near nothing within 72 hours. The system does not leave traces. That is not an accident. That is the design. Now, here is where the story stops being about death and starts being about something far more disorienting. Because to understand why a bird vanishes so completely, so precisely, so intentionally, you have to understand the sensory world it actually inhabits. And that world is almost incomprehensibly different from yours. A bird's visual system operates at a flicker fusion rate of around 100 frames per second. Yours maxes out at roughly 60, meaning birds process motion and environmental threat at a temporal resolution your brain is biologically incapable of matching. But that is almost the mundane part. The genuinely strange part is magnetoception. In the 1970s, physicist Klaus Scholten proposed that certain birds could sense the Earth's magnetic field through a quantum biological mechanism happening inside their own eyes. Decades of research, particularly on European robins, has since built substantial experimental support for this idea. Cryptochrome proteins in the bird's retina appear to exploit a quantum phenomenon called radical fauna, pair spin entanglement, to generate a direct neural representation of the planet's magnetic field. The bird does not feel north. It does not sense north. It sees north as a living, shifting overlay superimposed directly onto its visual field in real time. It navigates through a layer of geomagnetic data that your biology has no architecture to perceive. There is an entire dimension of environmental information built into the bird's daily experience of the world that is, for you, simply not there. And this is the bird sitting on your fence right now. That terminal withdrawal, that precise, deliberate, final disappearance is not random. It is a computation. In its last hoe, a bird is running every sensory system it possesses at full resolution, processing ultraviolet polarization patterns through the leaf canopy above, reading barometric pressure shifts your skin cannot detect, navigating by a magnetic geometry your eyes will never see. And somewhere inside that cascade of perception, inside a brain the size of a walnut, it identifies the specific location, the exact hollow, the precise tangle of roots and shadow that satisfies every threat minimization parameter its nervous system has spent an entire lifetime calibrating. Then it goes still, and the forest absorbs it. You have lived inside this system your entire life. Every morning you have spent in a garden, every walk through a park, every slow autumn afternoon in the woods, you were surrounded by this machinery running at full efficiency, and you never once saw it operating. The birds singing above you were simultaneously processing geomagnetic overlays and mapping ultraviolet sky gradients, and conducting a continuous internal audit of their own cellular health. And somewhere, always, one of them was beginning its final calculation, triangulating the precise coordinates of its own disappearance. That crow on your fence right now, patient, deliberate, methodical, is not simply a bird. It is the visible surface of a system whose full depth you have never been permitted to see. Its lineage was filtering out the weak and consuming the dead long before the first human being ever looked up at the sky and wondered what birds were. When its own time comes, it will vanish so completely that you will never know it happened. And here is the question I cannot stop thinking about. If you have spent years watching birds in one specific place, your garden, a familiar park, a stretch of woodland you know well, and you have never once found a body, does that mean the system is simply working as intended, or does it mean something stranger, that the birds around you have already are remind, in whatever language their nervous systems speak, exactly where they will go when the time comes, and that place is somewhere you will never think to look?